My name's Alli. Welcome to Alli's Annotation. Now let's talk about books. Today we're going to be doing my August reading recap and just talking through all the books that I read throughout August. Let's go ahead and start with a crispy Diet Coke. Cheers. And let's get into it. Now, before we get started, I just want to welcome you to my channel. This is the first time that I'm starting to explore YouTube as an option. I'm already on Instagram and TikTok, so feel free to follow me there, but I would love if you subscribe below, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments what you've loved or what I could improve on. So let's talk about books in August. This last month, I read 13 books for a total of 4,600 pages. My average star rating was actually a 3.81, and I'm kind of surprised. I had a really good reading month. In August, I also participated in ARC August, a readathon that focused on getting your ARCs read. So out of the 13 books I read, 10 of them were ARCs. If you're not familiar, ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy. This is a copy of a book that you receive in advance of it being published for the purpose of reading it and hopefully reviewing it and getting some buzz going early. I get a lot of my ARCs through NetGalley, although I also got one of my first physical ARCs this month as well. So getting 10 ARCs done in 1 month was incredible, and I really want to try and keep that going. You can head to my shorts to see my TBR Tower series, where I'm actually using a dice tower that I've got to choose which ARCs to read as I try to get that backlog down to 0. So now, let's talk about the books themselves. First up is The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst. This one I read in the print version, and then I also did listen to the audiobook on Libby as well because I like to read together sometimes. And this one I rated at a 3.5 stars. This is a cozy romantasy, and I did really enjoy it. In terms of just having all the good feels and cozy vibes that a cozy romantasy needs to have, definitely delivered. The reason that this was only a 3.5 for me was really more about me than the book, I think. And it's really that in a lot of cozy books, cozy fantasy, cozy romantasy, there just wasn't enough of a complex plot to keep me interested enough. So I did struggle a little bit with the fact that it was very chill feeling. It didn't feel high stakes, even when there were high stakes described in the plot. It also felt like sometimes the world building was just a little bit too relaxed. When we're looking at a cozy book that does feature a romance, a lot of times there's some world building that is kind of left by the wayside because we're going to focus on the elements that help readers feel more engrossed with this cozy feeling. But it also meant that we didn't get enough of a description of how magic works, and I felt like some of the details that were tossed in were just thrown in, and I couldn't really tell why. So for me personally, I enjoyed it. It was a good read. It's just maybe not my personal preference. So 3.5 stars. Next up, I read Melted by a Man by Andrea Andersen. This is actually the second in a contemporary romance series called Sunsteer Tech, which originally, the reason I read the first book is because it takes place at a tech company, and that's my background. I work in tech. And so I read the first book in July. I really liked it. And so I came back for the sequel. There is a third book and a fourth on the way, I believe. And I really enjoyed this. Melted by a Man follows the trope of a one-night stand, immediately followed by discovering that your one-night stand will be in your life for more than one night. And I eat that shit up. I already loved it. But then it also had some really cool neurodivergent rep. The main character, Jacqueline, struggles with what feel like panic attacks, but are really burnout attacks. They're really kind of like meltdowns. And so I really thought it was interesting and compelling as a person who's autistic with ADHD to kind of walk through her experience and, see these symptoms and things that she's going through and feel like, oh, I remember feeling like that too. She's going through the journey of realizing that she might be neurodivergent, which I thought was really compelling. The romance was really sweet too, and I will definitely be picking up more books in this series. I rated it 4 stars. Next up, this was an ARC, was Song of the Hell Witch, and Song of the Hell Witch by Taylor Hartley. This just launched on September 9th, and I need more people to read it. Please. I originally rated this at a 4.25. I might even bump that up to a 4.5 because I'm still thinking about this book. Taylor did a fantastic job coming up with something that really felt unique. Their writing was, for me, just really evocative of exactly the feelings they wanted me to feel while reading the book. So in this story, we follow along with Prudence, but we call her Prue for short, who has a secret. Prue lives in a patriarchal society that is being overtaken slowly by a religious sect. And this religious sect, very specifically, is for the oppression of women, and very specifically, the oppression of women with magic. Because the magic system in this world is so cool. Hartley has written a magic system where only women get magic, but women gain magic in their lives. They're not necessarily born with it. And they gain that magic when they hit a breaking point. So any woman who, in this very oppressive society, is downtrodden, is going through a tough experience, is experiencing maybe all of these microaggressions stacked on top of each other, when they reach a breaking point, they can kind of unlock this dormant magic in them, and it turns them into a hell witch. And Prue's secret is that she's a hell witch. So we follow along this journey of Prue trying to keep her secret, potentially failing, and everything that comes after. And it was just so cool to not only see our society reflected through this type of fantasy lens, but I also just really, really enjoyed the characters and their development. There were these subtle strings throughout Prue's journey where at the beginning, Prue, who has absolutely lived in the oppression of women, who has absolutely been affected by the oppression of women, has found herself, privileged enough to gain entry into the upper echelons of this male society. And she lives comfortably, despite the fact that on the other side of the city, most women do not. And she's kind of living in this bubble of, well, I got myself out at least. And so Hartley has so beautifully woven in this theme of, is that enough to just do for yourself and not do for others as well, which I really, really loved. There is a romantic subplot. I would say it's definitely not the main plot. This is fantasy romance for me, not romantasy. And there were some twists and turns that I did not see coming and I really enjoyed. And there is trans representation, and I ate this up. Taylor, book 2 tomorrow? I don't know. I can wait, I swear. If you like feminine rage, this is your jam. Another arc, and this one is a graphic novel. This is Forgive Me Not by Costa. This was so cute. It's a shorter read because it's a graphic novel, but I just found it adorable, compelling. I really had a great time reading it. Forgive Me Not is a little bit of a spin on maybe Tangled at the beginning, but it starts on a princess learning that she is actually a changeling, and she's kidnapped by the actual princess, and she's kidnapped, she's taken away. The two go on a journey together and they fall in love. Okay, thanks. I love it. It was adorable. It was a really great time to read. I rated it at 3.75 stars because there wasn't as much of a plot as I would like. That's, again, more on me. Next is an arc that's been sitting on my figurative shelf for a very long time. It's Strange Folk by Dyer. I went into this because originally, it's labeled as fantasy, fiction fantasy. I'm going to say that, in my opinion, I don't consider this fantasy. I would consider this a lit fic thriller, which I don't normally read. But I was kind of into it. So in the book, we follow a mom who is driving with her children back home to the deep woods in Appalachia. She is fleeing her recent divorce. She is fleeing this city life that she'd built for herself. And she's just trying to find a place to stop and rest. And that's going to be with her grandmother back home. When she gets there, things start happening and they're kind of spooky. Her grandmother is known for being a witch, for lack of a better term. The reason that the book is marked as fantasy is because they're using land magic, which the reason that I don't consider it super fantastical is because there are people in the deep woods, in the mountains of Appalachia, who practice land magic. And to me, this didn't feel that far from reality. So very realistic, very fantastical realism. And so things start happening a body might show up, and we have to figure out what happens. What I thought was just stunning about this, and what really took me by surprise, was how poignant the themes of grief and kind of that self-discovery were, and really fighting through the darker things, especially when we think about things like generational trauma. Our main character, Lee, just goes through a lot. She's been through a lot. She escaped this life a long time ago to go build a new one, and now she's being thrust back into this situation where she's having to face a lot of the things that she thought she'd escaped from, and I really enjoyed it. I rated it a 3.75. There were still a couple of things missing for me, just character-wise and relationship development-wise, but I did think that this was a really good read. If you are more into the thriller genre or just lit fic in general, I really think that you'll enjoy this. Next up is another ARC. This one is The Witchstone by Henry H. Neff. This is another ARC that had been on my figurative shelves for a very, very long time. And it's a real long book. It's over 500 pages, which is good because I have a prompt for Herkyed to read a book over 500 pages in a day. And I did that. In case you're not familiar, Herkyed is the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, and I'm currently participating in year 2 of this challenge. I'll put more details in the description below for you. You might recognize this book from the video that I did about reading descriptions in a silly accent to get myself into the book, and it worked. I was excited to read this, and it was a great time. I originally rated this at about a 3.75, but I do have to tell you, I'm still thinking about the book. I'm still thinking about what a good time, legitimately, I had listening to it and reading it. In this story, we follow demon Laszlo and human Maggie Drakeford. And Laszlo is a demon who is a curse keeper. His job is to maintain the curse of the Drakeford family. And Maggie is, unfortunately, one of the Drakefords. And so Laszlo, who is very lackadaisical about his job managing the curse, actually is confronted and forced by upper management to start doing something about it. So we follow Laszlo as he confronts the Drakefords, tricks them into thinking they're going to break the curse, and hijinks ensue. They are traveling all over the world to try and break this curse. It all has to be done in like 6 days. And this was enjoyable. Neff's storytelling style is not irreverent, but it's just a little bit like sarcastic, a little bit off the cuff. And it was not a happy subject matter, but it was a happy read. I was smiling. There was levity, there were funny moments, and I just really, really liked it. This I would classify as like contemporary fantasy. It does have like the barest hint of a romance subplot, but that is really not the focus at all, and I still really, really liked it. Another one from the ARC backlist. I was approved for this ARC so long ago, and I finally got to it. In the Shadow of the Fall by Tobi Ogundiran. And this one, for me, was one that I struggled with because it is very short. This is a novella. It's only about 160 pages long. I needed it to be like 500 pages long. In the book, we are following the escape of an acolyte from a temple to the gods, and this specific acolyte is thinking that something is wrong with them. They are not able to connect with the goddess like everyone else in their life has, and so they are escaping, trying to seek a way to connect with their goddess. And I will say that the actual like religion and magic built into this is expansive. Within the first chapter or two, I was already drowning a little bit in how much there was to learn about this universe. But because the novella is so short, it moved through a lot of this very quickly. We follow this acolyte as they are, escaping the temple, as they run into additional characters, as they start to unravel this mystery of why they can't connect to their goddess. And we are thrown so much information so quickly. And that was really difficult for me. I think that the lore was so rich. I loved its roots in multiple different African cultures, and I just wanted so much more. I know that this is a part of a series. It's part of a duology of 2 novellas that partner together. For me, this could have been 500 pages and I would have eaten it up. my main complaint was that it moved so quickly. I really struggled to apprehend the world building of it. Again, that could be just a me problem, but it did affect my reading experience a little bit. So I want this author to triple the size of this book for me. I rated it at a 3.25. And now we are at The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This one I did originally get approved for as an ARC, but I've since obtained a physical copy that's downstairs in my basement. And I have been looking forward to this one for a long time, but I've struggled with it just getting started because she's thick. This book is 650 pages long, which is enormous. And so I did try reading this back in like February and I didn't get very far. And I said, hey, maybe not right now. But I'm so glad I picked this up again. And I'm so glad that I had it on audiobook on Libby to listen to. In this book, we are following a scholar in the Raven House, so the Raven Scholar, Nema Craw, as she is unwittingly, a little unwillingly, thrust into a competition for the throne. In this world, there are 8 different houses, and they are all ruled by an emperor. And so every time an emperor is ready to step down, they have a competition to see who will take their place. And each house nominates one person. And Nema becomes that person. As the competition to become emperor heats up, one of the contestants is found dead. And so as we start to try and solve this mystery, more mysteries pop up, and there is so much political intrigue in this. There is some really, really interesting character play and relationship play that honestly is kind of fluid and moves around a lot. And this was just really interesting to me. I could definitely see some inspiration from books that I've loved in the past, like the Dragon Eye Duology by Alison Goodman. And I felt like the author did a really nice job of giving us some really rich detail from a fairly well-developed world without info dumping on us, which I really enjoyed. I did feel like there were some pacing issues with the book because, I mean, it's like nearly 700 pages. So there's always going to be some pacing issues unless that book is jam-packed. But I had a good time reading this. I rated this one at 4 stars. On to a more recent ARC, The Dating Prohibition by Taj McCoy. Now, I have to preface this because I really, really loved Taj McCoy's last book, The Good Ones. And I struggled with this one big time. I'm so sorry. In The Dating Prohibition, we follow female main character Kendra as she is returning home from a couple of years of world travel and honestly from even more years of struggling under her family's expectations for her. Kendra is returning right as her brother and his wife are opening a new restaurant, and so we see her helping out in that restaurant while also planning to open a restaurant of her own. As we are doing this, we run into old friend of the family, BJ. And BJ is hot. BJ is a good looking man. And he sounds good. He looks good. BJ is a snack in every sense of the word. As Kendra is starting to plan out her own restaurant, helping her brother with his, struggling with kind of living in her brother's shadow, she's also realizing that BJ is a lot flirtier than he used to be when they were growing up. And although I do really like the premise of this, I struggled big time. First, and this is going to be petty, this is more on me, I love restaurant settings. I love movies set in restaurants. I love books set in restaurants. I've worked in restaurants myself. And I found it really unrealistic how the owners of the restaurant, the brother and his wife, are not there until closing on opening night and don't seem to be there pretty often. They have a lot of days off in like the first 2 weeks of their brand new restaurant being open, which for me was just super unrealistic, but that's more on me. What I struggled with even more though was the characterization of BJ, because honestly, even though he looks like a snack and he acts like a snack in the first scene we get him in, it's kind of downhill from there. We open with BJ flirting with Kendra. She is seeing him for the first time in years, and he's like giving her some eyes, flirting with her. Intense flirting that even I can pick up on. And then he tells her, oh, this would not be right for us. We can't do this. And then he's drunk and they have sex. And then he doesn't remember what they did. And then And then he asks her to explain in detail what they did that he forgot so that he can get horny again. This is not a man that I would be simping over. This is not a man that any woman should be simping over. When it comes to like throwing a book out of frustration, this is the one right here. I also found Kendra's character a little tough to relate to for me because she talks a lot about how important her family is to her and how important their bonds are. And when one of them wrongs her, she just kind of, okay, I forgive you. And that doesn't feel realistic to the characterization that she had earlier in the book. Her character felt inconsistent to me at times. I do think that her character had so much potential, and some of the side characters, Shanda and Lonnie, I need a Lonnie spin-off book. When? Tomorrow? Yesterday? I cannot wait to read more about Lonnie. I really loved her. And so a lot of the characters, I just wanted to see so much more done with them. This one was not for me because I'm too old to be dealing with a man who does things like that anymore. So it did evoke some feelings from me, I'll give you that, but I had to rate this at a 2.75. And again, I have loved Taj McCoy's other books. So I think that this was more of my personal taste in men getting in the way of my reading again. The next arc on the list is another one that has been on my list for so long. Oops. And it is Hum by Helen Phillips. This is a dystopian sci-fi, and it was so weird. In Hum, we follow along with May, a woman who is a mother and a wife, and her husband has lost his job, so she's made the decision to have a life-altering surgery in exchange for some quick cash to get her family back on their feet. And this is a society that has robots. They're called Hums, H-U-M, and these Hums are deeply ingrained into a lot of service work, a lot of governmental jobs, and a lot of law enforcement or surveillance type jobs. People can purchase a Hum for their home to help make life easier, but then they will also interact with Hums regularly in everyday life. In the story, May uses this quick cash that she's gotten to take her family on a little retreat to a nature reserve, kind of like the last remaining one in the big concrete jungle, very Central Park. And it's really not necessarily about what's happening literally in the story, but it's really about learning how to deal with constant surveillance and documentation in life. Everyone in the family has a phone, kids have a wrist device, and at some point in the story, it's considered child abuse to not allow your child to have a device on them, because what if they get lost? You can't find your kid. You should have had your device on. And, May in this universe grew up without this technology. So theoretically, she's like a 90s, 2000s baby, and this is like the 2030s. But it was just a really uncanny, kind of eerie look at how we view technology, and especially surveillance technology and tracking technology, and how it's woven into our lives and how should it be woven into our lives. This book did not paint it in either a negative or positive light. It just was super, super thought-provoking. I rated this at a 3.75 stars, and I really would recommend it to anyone who wants a relatively short, just thought piece on technology and the role it plays in our lives. We are getting down to the last couple of arcs on that list for August. This next one was Not Safe for Work by Nisha J. Tuli. I have had this on my list for a hot minute. I actually got this as a part of my entrance into the Discover Forever program, and I liked this. This was a good time for me. I really, really liked it. Not Safe for Work follows Trisara, who is a female engineer in a very white dude environment. I work in software engineering, so I really felt this down to my bones. And Trisara has been working so hard for promotions that have been given to the boss's son, Rafe. And Rafe, we hate him. We hate him at first because Tris hates him. And Tris and Rafe are selected to go to this company leadership retreat in Hawaii. So they are they go on this trip. They're the only two from like their branch, and then every other branch also has sent a couple of people, and they are, stuck in a room together. Uh-oh. Oh no. And I ate this up. I loved it. It is a romance in the way that you would predict a romance like this happens. There's only one bed, there's only one room, they are forced proximity together, they are not friends. She is fighting against patriarchy in a workplace in a field that is extremely white male dominated, and she is a non-white brown woman, and I felt this book. I felt it in my bones. There are so many things that Tris had to fight against that I have personally experienced, and the way that the male main character responded to a lot of these things was not always 100% right, which I really liked. So there were some times where he was like about to say the wrong thing, and then he had to sit and think and be like, oh, what did I do wrong, or what was I about to do wrong? So he had to learn. We love growth. I really found this quote poignant for what it's like to work in this kind of environment. She said, "There was a time when the idea of smashing through glass in a male-dominated field was thrilling, but over the years, it just left me as wrung out as a threadbare dishcloth." And that hit the nail on the head completely. What I also really identified with was that kind of what was driving a lot of the plot and development through this journey was Tris working on healing from a relatively recent sexual assault that she experienced. And so I just felt like the characters were compelling. The relationship between them was compelling. The development was compelling. It was a good time. I rated it at 4.25 stars. Our last arc from August is If Wishes Were Retail by Auston Habershaw. And this was wacky. This was if you could make a book into a wacky inflatable arm flailing tube man, that's this book. It is about a teenage girl who is looking to get a job at the mall, and she just needs to make some cash. She does not like her family situation. Her parents are fighting all the time. Her dad is broke all the time. And she gets a job working as the desk clerk sales girl for a genie who wants to sell wishes in the mall kiosk. And it's zany, and it's goofy, and it's really sweet because this whole journey that she goes on working for the genie, thinking about like answering people's wishes, what they think they want versus giving people what they need. It was a really interesting play on that concept, and it really got at, thinking about the main character, how she was wanting to make money and escape her family. That's what she wanted, but not necessarily what she needed. It was fun. It was sweet. It was short. It's like 250 pages. I gave this a 3.75 stars. And last, but certainly not least for August, I finally read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This is one of the best books I've read this year. I gave this a 4.75 stars. I have not stopped thinking about it. I might up it to a 5-star, and I never give out 5 stars. I think I've given out 1 5-star review this year. But this comes damn close. A Study in Drowning follows Effie Sayre, who is the only female student at the architecture college, as she enters a competition because her very favorite author, Emrys Myrddin, the audiobook pronounces it Midden, and it's written Myrddin, maybe? We'll figure it out. But her favorite author, who is also like the national author of her country, he died, and his estate is looking for someone at the architecture college to redesign his estate to make it kind of like a memorial. And she wins the competition. She's super excited. She travels to it and discovers that it is sinking into the foundation, into the sea. It's like on the coast at an island. And that's why no one else won. That's why no one else was chosen. And so she arrives at this house. She sees its state of disrepair. And she also notices that there's one more person who is also visiting the house, Preston Ellery. And Preston Ellery is the bane of her existence. And so as she sets about trying to work on how to design this house to make sure that it can honor her favorite author's memory, she discovers that Preston is trying to discredit that author. He's there under false pretenses. He is trying to discredit Emrys Myrddin's work, and they find out things together, and they investigate together, and they slowly realize that they maybe like to do a lot of things together. And on the surface, this book has its plot about the secrets of this author. Below the surface, drowning beneath, anyway, if you will. Below the surface, though, this book was about so much more. At the beginning of the book, we talk about how Effie is so uncomfortable with her place at the architecture college, in part because she's experienced a sexual assault from a professor, and she experiences a lot of misogyny in the college. And so this is not only a study in this house that is drowning. It is a study in the drowning, which is a historical event. It was a tsunami, theoretically, that wiped out lots and lots of towns and people 200 years ago in the book. It is a study in drowning in your own trauma, in drowning in grief, in drowning in yourself to escape those things. And I can't express to you how much I loved how Effie's internal journey mirrored what she was discovering as part of the plot. There are some fantasy elements to this because Emmer Smirden was a fantasy writer. He wrote about fae folklore in the world, and there are some fantasy elements that I think come in really beautifully, even though a lot of this is more realistic fiction, I guess. There's not as much magic as you would see traditionally in a fantasy, but I loved this. I loved this so much. I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil anything for you, but just know that when it says a study in drowning, it doesn't mean literally always, and there are multiple levels to it, and there's so much subtext, there's so much depth to the story, to the characters, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. I will absolutely be reading the sequel. This one's currently at a 4.75 for me, but we'll see. It might go up. So there we go. 13 books read in August, a 3.81 star rating all around, and generally a really, really good month of reading. I am so grateful for the crew over at ARC August. I have linked Vanessa's page down below, who really pushed me to read so many of the ARCs that have been sitting on my shelf. And I got through 2 books that were sitting on my physical TBR as well, which is awesome. And it was just a really good time. It pushed me to read things that I otherwise might not have picked up. It still allowed me some of that mood reading aesthetic. And it also connected me to a lovely group of people who I'm sure you'll be seeing around my channel very, very soon. On to more reading for September. And let me know below if you've loved any of these books too.